So if the goal is to increase revenue, the business objective will be, like a SMART goal, right? So for me, it's a lot about understanding we're going to evaluate this hypothesis. I think that the AI tools refer to them more as unmoderated interviews. Generally, I do think that businesses are start to care more about sustainability, which is generally like a good thing. Like I said, good morning, everyone. My name is Rory. I've been doing user research now for 10 years. That is my entire career, which makes me feel old. But I studied mechanical engineering of all random things. So I got into the world of user research through a master's when I realized I'd rather build for people rather than the actual machines. I've done my time at big tech a little bit. I've worked mostly in fintech as well, and on the side now I like to talk with startups to make sure they're doing a good job with their own user research. I love to teach and mentor. I love to make products easier to use, and in my spare time I like to cook. So great to be here this morning. What we'll be talking about today is the what, where, and why of user research, how to build a user research strategy that is about your product specifically and meeting your goals as a business. And I will talk about the 3 to 5 core user research methodologies that you need to basically cover 80+% of your user research requirements. And depending on people's time and appetite, I can talk through the user research phases as well. There will be a mild interactive component to this, so everyone's got their worksheets there, a pen as well. I will be pausing at times for some audience interaction, so don't be shy, we're all friends here. And if you are shy, I might pick on people as well, we'll see. So to begin with, my take on user research, where it is right now and why it is super important. So the goal of user research, as we all hopefully know, is to make products that are useful and easy to use. So to understand the actual users and then build for their needs. We are in a brave new world for user research, as we are for many products at the moment, particularly around with AI and new tools and things like that. This has been going on for a while with user research, so there's a lot of tools out there that enable you to do your own user research, and that is great. It is being democratized, and I, for one, feel we should embrace that. They are very powerful tools, and user research as a whole is quite easy to learn, but it's very hard to master. I can say that because I've been doing it for 10 years and I still learn stuff every day. And that's why I included this little monkey. I feel like to use these new tools and to learn a little bit of user research skills is kind of like giving a gun to a monkey. It's a very powerful thing, and if you use it wrong, you might get the wrong insights and go in the completely wrong direction than you need to. So today, I hope to educate everyone in some core ideas that will stop you from going this way, but go the correct way. Great, so why learning the basics is important. You are biased, we all are, and you cannot not be biased. So we have anchoring bias, confirmation bias, projection bias, sampling, availability, blah, blah, blah. There's a list of hundreds of these things, and you cannot escape them, but you can be aware of them. Bad research also doesn't smell. So bad engineering, bad coding, bad UX design will become pretty obvious pretty quickly. Bad user research can often give you what looks like really good insights. And you will not know that they are bad insights, maybe ever. It might be a year or two later, you've realized you've built the wrong thing that people don't actually want to use. And there's a very low chance you will go back and say, oh, those interviews we did a couple of years ago were actually leading us the wrong way. I've never seen that really happen, but it definitely does. Well, I've seen it happen, but I haven't seen the leadership go back and say, oh, we did the wrong thing there for user research. So it can be very dangerous if you do stuff and it looks good, but it actually isn't. In my days studying mechanical engineering, I still remember one of the professors explaining that there's a lot of really good tools out there. It'll do all the analysis for you. It'll build your structure. You're building your engine. It'll run it. It'll do stress, strain, heat mapping, everything, and it'll look really great. But then when you build it, it won't work because you as the engineer need to know if this stuff was actually analyzed correctly by the computer, right? So the other thing to keep in mind is the questions that matter. So the most important thing about user research is asking the right questions, because the insights are the things that get the glory. It is the amazing information that recommends you go this way, not that way. But if you ask the wrong question, you'll get the wrong insights. So let's talk about what is useful about user research and things people often get wrong. What is valuable? It will save you time and money. You can identify problems before your users do, which is very convenient because you don't need to launch stuff before and then learn it is bad. It will also find you new opportunities. You can understand the needs of your users out of their eyes rather than your own. And it'll allow you to make confident decisions. Having more information is always useful, and that information needs to come from multiple angles. And some misconceptions about user research: it's slow and expensive, it needs to be perfect, and it disrupts the roadmap. These can be true, it can be slow and expensive, but that's often if you're not experienced a little bit with it, if you've built the wrong pipeline, so you're not efficient in recruiting. There's this idea that it needs to be perfect. This is a trap that I have fallen into many a time, where you want it to be really good, because often like user researchers come from more of an academic type of background. But no data ever is. And especially when you hear about, market trends and the gut feel of like the leadership or directors, that is not perfect information either. User research does not need to compete with that as being the correct answer. And it disrupts the roadmap, which is a bit of a curved one. It should. The point of good research done at the right time is that it changes strategies and the ultimate direction. Cool. So I've harped on about this a little bit, but user research is just more. Sorry, I feel like I'm standing right in the way of this thing. User research is just more information that can be combined with everything else to help you make a better decision. And the key takeaway is the right type of user research at the right time is what delivers value. And the warning here, like I said before, is that overdone perfect user research isn't informing a good decision. Sorry, overdone perfect user research that isn't informing a decision is not good research. And I can speak on that because I've done that several times. So now is a bit of audience participation. I was going to ask this before, but I forgot. But can people raise their hands if they've done user research interviews or crafted a survey or anything like that? Raise their hands. Oh, wow, awesome, amazing. So if anyone would like to speak about their experience doing user research, has anyone done like a user interview recently? Is anyone brave enough to talk about that? Over there? Yep.
So I do it all the time.
Oh, amazing.
When we were first coming up with our idea, we did a lot of user interviews.
Oh, great.
Talking to as many people as we could to understand their problem better.
Oh, great, yeah. Nice. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we have them speak at least 80% of the time.
Yep.
And save the
Good
demo.
job. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah.
I found that to be really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I can always improve, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, good pro tip there that user research can be disguised as like sales calls. That is a good thing to do, in my personal opinion. I think there was a hand raised over here as well somewhere. Yeah.
Haven't done research in the past few months since joining a new company, but have done it previously before.
Yep.
I found it quite difficult because in this new role there's not a designated research function, and it's just
Yeah, interesting.
administrative tasks in terms of like setting it all up that I'm sort of struggling with a bit and find that hard, the admin burden. But
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully find ways to reduce that.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest barriers to doing consistent, high quality research is just the like admin of it, because it does take effort to email the people and book them in, and then they don't arrive or whatever, that kind of thing as well. But yeah, that's like a dear, and that's a good example of like democratization of user research. It's good to have a user researcher, but I find that they come after those core roles as well, which is why it's good to implement it early, which is great. Has anyone done any user research that they've found has like drastically changed their product strategy or the direction of the company, of like their build or anything? A little bit, yeah. Great. So let's keep going. So this is like the core of today. It is how to build a product first user research strategy. So this is where you can start to warm up with your worksheets, because we will be creating your very own research pyramid. This is a bit of a concept that I've put together, yet to launch it on LinkedIn, so patent pending. But you can spot here that it should look relatively familiar. So at the top, you've got a roadmap that is your strategy. Then it goes down and you've got your projects and your studies. So that's user research studies. So the idea is that the roadmap is your big goals that spans years, a year, however long. And then your projects build up into the roadmap. So that might be individual teams working on a thing for like a quarter or a few months or whatever. And then your studies. So those are the user research studies that build into the projects, which ultimately impact the roadmap. So the key thing here that I'm trying to explain is that the user research builds up into the roadmap to affect strategies. So at the roadmap, you've got your goals for the business. So these are pretty classic things. We want to make more money. We want to grow the company. We want to get more attention and eyeballs on our app or whatever. There isn't anything too complex here. They're pretty universal. And then you've got the project objectives. So the business goals and then the research goals, objectives and deliverables below it. So these are more timely. They span, like I said, a few months. They're a bit more direct and focused. And the research builds into the business objectives. And then at the bottom, you've got your actual study. So this is the user research happening practically. So that's where you've got your like methodology. So we're talking interviews with the customers, surveys, etc. And then your discussion guides are the actual like, what are we going to ask them when we're speaking to them on the phone? So that's very like practical end. Today we are going to be looking at these things. We're not really going to get into how to craft interview questions or anything like that. That is a whole other thing. So let's talk about business objectives. Like I said, the goals are pretty universal. If you'd like to jot those down on your worksheet, if they're applicable, things like we're going to make lots of money this year, I don't know. And then your business objectives is what's going on at the team level, right? Or your individual goals for the quarter. I think I've got objectives, examples of these on the next slide. Yeah, so business goal, we're going to increase sales, great. business objective might be a bit more specific. We're going to reduce churn on the website. So that's a bit more direct. I'll pause for does everyone kind of have that idea? Any, have we got yeah, so here we go. Audience participation. Does anyone want to share their business goals and objectives? Have I got any takers? No, that's fine. There we go, at the back, lovely. Nice. Is that the goal or the objective? Goal, nice, yeah. What's like a more contained objective that would build up to the goal? Numbers, yeah, nice, yeah. Any kind of like anything practically that you're trying to build to increase the numbers? Nice, yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah. So increase like use of the app is kind of the objective there, at least from our little thing. So yeah, good example there. Does anyone else have any objectives they'd like to share yourself?
Reduce time consumed to create the product.
Nice. Okay, great. Yeah. So more internal objective, right?
Yes.
Within the business, yeah.
For my services, more is based to be everything handmade, and I need to reduce the time because I'm not able to right now. If I have like I can't deal with high demand of customers
Yeah.
because of the time consuming to create the product.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So
I see.
I need to reduce that.
Yeah.
Find me a machine that can help me instead of doing something in 10 or 12 hours, reduce it to 5.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. So.
I have a question.
Please. Yeah.
So for example, if my business goal is to increase the revenue
Yep.
of the company, and so does the business objective needs to be linked to that goal in the sense that does it need to be a key metric that would eventually lead to achieving that goal?
Yeah. Good question. So the business objective should, like, in my opinion, is linked to the goal, which, like I said, is more of an overarching thing. So if the goal is to increase revenue, the business objective will be like a SMART goal, right? So it's like measurable, you can action upon it. It is still business related because it links a bit to user research here. It's kind of linked with the customers. So it might be around identifying like a target market who will, you can advertise to. It might be trying to increase use of the app, a bit like that other objective. So it's a bit contained, related to what you're able to action on within the next month or two or half year or whatever.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it can be qualitative and or quantitative.
Yeah. I don't try and push it to be like you need to have like a metric specifically. If the business operates well with measurable things, that is great. If it doesn't, that is fine. But we'll be getting into some other objective, some examples soon, which will hopefully do it. Sorry, I feel like I've lost my place a bit now. Vasily, I accidentally pressed a button and I managed to lose. Can I go to the slides on the computer there? Yeah. If you go, just go. Maybe go up. We'll go back to. Okay, cool. Here we go. Yep. If you make it big. Amazing, thank you. Cool, so, right, so here is an opportunity to kind of update or write down a few more business objectives. So these, in my experience, is kind of how to start them. These are the kind of key keywords to use and the key areas. So often like I said before, it is about growth, it's about revenue, it's about improving the product or the experience. They're quite action-orientated things, so it's like we want to increase, we want to define, we want to attract people, we want to decide on a thing or improve it, we want to build and yada yada. So that leans towards measurable. It doesn't have to be quantitative or qualitative, but it's like a goal that you can, it's an objective that you can action on to reach your goal. Cool. So I've already shared. So let's get into research objectives. As I said before, this is about what user research can achieve to help give the information the result to achieve your business objective. And then we get down to the methodology, which is actually choosing the method to achieve the research objective, which will achieve the business objective, which will achieve the goal. The reason that I've built it like this is because in my experience as a user researcher and working with others to build strategies, people tend to jump straight to methodologies. So what can we do? We can interview people, or we can do a survey, or we can talk to people on the street, or I can ask my mum, So that's great, but that's kind of, you're picking the methodology first, which will impact what results and insights you actually get, and then you're kind of using those to get back to the goal rather than defining the goal first. So now's an opportunity to write down some research objectives. The questions to ask is, what information do I need to then reach those business objectives? So to use an example, what I had before was the website. So if the goal is to increase revenue and you want to increase it through the website by reducing churn, what information do we need from user research? We want to know what about the website is hard to use, where do people get confused, and how do we recommend we stop that from happening. So we want to identify the pain points for the usability aspects. We want to know what's hard to read, what's confusing, and we want to list recommended ways to address those. So now, hopefully this looks a little bit familiar for like usability testing, that kind of a thing. So have a go now, jot down some research objectives. I've got a little, do I have it? Yeah, so here's a good way to start your research objectives. These are kind of key terms and areas. So often it's around, you want to understand something, you want to understand pain points, you want to like explore the reason for actions behind things, you want to conclude stuff that's a bit more giving recommendations, establishing benchmarks, and the last one is more quantitative. So if you want to evaluate how long to complete a task, maybe measuring the time or kind of NPS, things of that nature. So I'll give people a few seconds and then we're going to do some audience participation. So the key takeaway here is that research needs to be based on the business objectives to make a decision. It is very important that it's not what is interesting to you, and it's not about getting insights to validate what you're already planning to do. This is a thing that I could talk about for like hours, because I've done this a lot where people want to do user research to confirm what they're planning to do, and that is not good user research. So does anyone want to share some research objectives? Has anyone got any jotted down? Does anyone want to conclude anything from their research? And so, yes, at the back, you're first over there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, Master. I am building a creative platform to develop brands.
Oh, cool. Yeah, nice.
So I am currently offering the branding service to understand what are the pain points of the process,
Nice.
what makes the process become like convoluted and long and boring.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. I love it. Love it.
I am testing it with different companies that agreed to give me feedback on
Oh,
the
amazing.
process,
Yeah, yeah.
and also learn where to integrate AI to,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
accelerate
AI, nice. Yeah, yeah, fancy, yeah.
to accelerate those, bottlenecks, and improve the overall experience.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, that will affect the UX UI of the software.
Yeah, great. How are you doing it? Is it like interviews or surveys or what?
I'm getting these companies to go through the process.
Yeah, nice.
In 3 weeks instead of
Oh,
2
great.
months,
Yeah,
which is normally like the average length of a branding process.
wild. Yeah,
And yeah, trying to deliver it in 3 weeks with the AI integrations done manually, obviously, because I still don't have the software platform.
yeah,
And yeah, asking them for feedback in each stage of those 3 weeks.
nice.
Learn what works, what doesn't work, where do we need to, become better, where would AI improve the overall experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. I was having a conversation with a gentleman who I can't spot in the audience, but about B2B tools. I've worked in that space a fair bit, and B2B is my favorite space to work as a user researcher because the users care about the product so much. They personally they want it to work really well, and they will happily explain every little thing that is not good and spend hours being like, this is hard to use or that's a bit slow, and you can get back some amazing information there. Oh, great. And then we had a person at the back there. Oh, nice. Yeah, cool.
Create a platform to help buyers find sellers in the food service market.
Yeah,
It's kind of a really complicated market, lots of different channels. I've done some market validation, done
yeah.
some pricing, and then the bit that I'm looking to do now is to do the real user research, really just to understand their pain points.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Before building that MVP.
Yeah, good. Yeah, yeah, that's great. Good timing as well, because I feel like you could do it and it's got that opportunity to actually impact strategy and stuff as well, which is great. Yeah, just checking time. I think we're all right. Great. So let's keep pushing. So I'm going to get into the framework for user research methodologies. This is now that opportunity to, you've got your objectives, your goals, things like that, and now you can start to identify the right way to execute your user research. So it is built on a two-part matrix thing happening here. So the first is quantitative and qualitative, the what and the why. Hopefully these aren't crazy new terms for everyone. Quantitative is the what, so it's about numbers, metrics, data. It's indirect, so that's indirectly measuring your user. So things like a survey, forms, things of that nature. So you personally are not interacting, it's indirect. And it's generally larger sample sizes, so we're thinking hundreds, thousands of responses, data points, etc. Qualitative user research is the why. So why do people do the thing? And this is direct. You are interacting with the user, speaking with them or observing them directly. It is about observations and interpretations. So your brain's involved. It's a little bit more subjective, but you get very deep information. And it's generally smaller, so 5 to 10 people that you are speaking with. I would note that AI is blurring this line, so you've got the what and the why on either side. There's a lot of AI tools now that kind of combine it, so you can do, at least in theory, qualitative user research, the why at the quantitative scale, so you can get thousands of data points that is still qualitative. So these tools are unmoderated interviews, so where you type up questions and then it blasts them off to thousands of people, hundreds of people. It'll kind of interview them as a robot and then record them, and it'll come back to you all beautiful and pre-analyzed, and it's all very fancy. It's all very automated, so it can write you your questions, it can recruit people for you, it can do its own analysis. But of course, there's a few risks. As I spoke about earlier, user research is hard to master, but easy to learn. With these tools, in my personal experience, I've spoken with a few startups doing them. I was actually the user researcher that had to kind of compete with their AI tool. So I did interviews with people, their AI tool did interviews too, and then we kind of compared results, which they then published on their blog. And of course, the AI tool is very competitive and good, but which it is to an extent. But I think that the point that I'm trying to make here, as I said before, is that I embrace these tools. You all can as well. I do not think that it is a bad thing, but it does come with a bit of a warning. Because human beings are quite weird creatures. We do these odd little pauses. We squint our eyes when we don't like something, and I don't ever think like an AI tool will really get those little weird things that we have. So the next thing is attitude versus behavioral research. So this is what we say versus what we do. Attitudinal user research is our opinions, our emotions, and our feelings. So this is what we want, what we need, our goals. It's what we talk about with other people, what we say. We get this information from asking people questions, and it aligns closely with the qualitative aspect, why people do stuff. And then there's the behavioral user research. So this is observations of people's actions and choices. So how people use things, how they interact with the screen, with the app, with the whatever else. And it comes from us watching and observing people. So this aligns more with the quantitative aspects of it, right? And it's important to collect both. If these were the same, if people said what they do and do what they say, the world would probably have less problems. So we need to get both of these things together. And this leads us to this beautiful 3D framework. Take a picture. This is not mine. I would love it. I would love if I was smart enough to have come up with this. This is from the Nielsen Norman group, which is a fantastic user research resource website thing. I feel like I should have put down the name of the man who wrote the article, but it's out there somewhere. So you can see here, it's this nice little graph of what people say, of quant and qual, attitudinal and behavioral. There's a whole bunch of research methodologies on here. They are intentionally kind of hard to read. I don't expect you to know all of them because they boil down to these 5 core methodologies. In my experience, if you've got these 5, and in fact these 3, you're probably going to cover 90% of your user research needs. If you can learn to run a usability test, write a good survey, do a good interview, and if you've got maybe an AI tool on your site as well, and you're collecting regular feedback from the customers, you are in a very, very good space. I'll let people take their final photos. Cool. So let's go to an example. I won't read through everything, but you've got your objectives here for, your business and your user research. And then the key thing here is to look at the methodology. So you've got a survey, an interview, and a usability test. The key thing to spot is that they all contribute to the objectives, but in slightly different ways. There's ones which are aligned more and aligned less. For example, the interviews and the survey go back to the research objective that is more quantitative. I'll go over here. So we're looking at the quant zone and attitudes, and it goes to a survey. And then you go here, and you've got your survey, and that's a heavier influence to the quantitative objective compared to, say, the usability test, which is a weaker link to the quantitative. However, this is more qualitative, coming from a usability test, and that's got a heavier link back to usability testing, and slightly medium one to the interviews as well there. So the key takeaway is that research methodologies are different hammers, so you can see different nails. If you only are comfortable doing surveys because you don't like to talk to people, you're only ever going to get attitudinal quantitative insights that are reliable. It's very hard to ask people behaviors through a survey. You will not be able to get good stuff there. So branch out, learn to do interviews, learn to do usability tests, learn to do surveys, and you'll be totally fine. Right, audience participation. Let's kind of open this up and think, like, is this striking home for people? Do people feel that they're pretty comfortable with these methodologies that I've explained, or is this all kind of new stuff for you all? Anyone want to share yourself over there?
Very relieving. I think you say you think you can get 90% from just 3 different methods, because
Yep.
it can sometimes seem a bit overwhelming, the amount of different things you can do.
Yeah, definitely.
Really reassuring.
Awesome, great, yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions for me? Yourself?
I just wonder if there's an alternative way of gathering quantitative data that is not surveyed.
Yeah, good.
People just hate doing surveys.
They do hate surveys. So yeah, very, very good question. There are quite a few quantitative methodologies. I think with quant, it does blur into things that you might not call user research, so things like getting analytics from the website, kind of observing like behaviors in terms of like how people use your product or interact with it. You've got more complex things like eye tracking and stuff as well, which is weird, have to get a person to wear a thing or whatever. But like, I think for you described doing more like longitudinal research with your clients, and it's quite contextual, So that actually being present can lead to a lot of very useful quantitative insights, because you can actually be there, you can observe, but also collect a lot of analytical information about how they work, what they do, how long it is to complete things. One of my favorite studies that I've done is like learnability testing and time on task. So that was where we tracked people using products, and it was very hands-off. So we just observed them, recorded down the time, or recorded how long it took them to get through bits of the website. And that provided really good quantitative information about the time to go from here to here to here. And then we got them to repeat it every third day. And then within a week, you could see it took people this long to get, good. And then if we tweak things, it only takes that long, right? So quantitative information is great because you can blend it with qualitative there. I hope that answers your question a little bit. Great, so getting back to the essential methodologies. I had it there as a quick reminder for everyone. Great, so we are now closing in on the end. So I've got a bit of an open forum here, but I feel like we've got time to kill, so I can get into the extra bonus part that I had. Cool. I will have this up at the end as well. So let's talk about the phases of user research. So there's 2 main phases, the discovery part of it and the evaluative part of it as well. Discovery is deeper understanding of your users and their problems, so like their actual needs, what their bigger goals are, that kind of thing. This is used to inform product strategy, the overall direction you are going. And it's also known as generative, exploratory, or strategic user research, if you want to look that up later. Whereas on the other side is evaluative, so this is more product focused. It is to hone down to an actionable point. So this is comparing, designs. It's doing usability testing to understand if we should use a larger button or a smaller button. It's a lot of like refining, fast-paced stuff. It is also known as formative or summative user research. So this is a thing that I've been speaking about a little bit, being wary of doing user research that doesn't contribute to a decision. So there's an article that like rocked the user research world about a year ago from Judd Anton. As a bit of context, I was laid off from Meta about a year ago because they decided they didn't need as many user researchers during the great layoff. And the timing of this article was great because Judd, who is a very good user researcher, wrote this article to say, for too long, user researchers have done middle range user research that contributes to kind of nothing. It is not strategic and it's not evaluative. It kind of hovers in this weird middle state. So it's not business orientated. It's not really informing decisions. It's validating people's opinions. It's we know we're going this way and we just want to feel a bit more confident, or we've not spoken to customers even though we'll build it, but me as the PM I feel like we should probably talk to customers, I guess. And it's often kind of hypothetical. So it's like, we could look into this and maybe it'd be useful, but we're not really sure. And we might do it depending on the result. This does get into an argument around blue sky research. And I do think there's a big space for that, but it's kind of a nice to have and it's not like startup moving forward space. Happy to discuss this more at the end if anyone's got any strong opinions too. So this is just more of an example of this user research to avoid. So how do users feel about the feature? Like if they feel bad about it, are you going to change it? That's not behavioral, right? And it's not strategic either. And I have a hunch about a product idea. Let's do a quick little survey. It's like, well, are we going to build a product based on a hunch, based on a quick survey? Maybe we should do like a more in-depth strategic thought about it. My favorite one, which is a problem even today, is we know this is a bad user experience, but I would like to prove it. If we know it's bad, are we not going to try and improve it anyway? Why do we need to prove it by talking to users? What we should be doing is building a new version of that experience and testing that to see if it's better than our current one. Anywho, great. So that actually wraps it up. Here is some information about me. If you'd like to work together, please reach out or just have a chat. I'm doing my best to break into a space where I help startups build their own user research strategies. And also I just like talking to startups. So that goes to my LinkedIn. Wonderful. I'm happy to open it up if anyone's got any thoughts, questions. Happy to discuss. Otherwise, I can hand it back to Vasily, please.
Question around when you said don't test an interest, focus on this objective. Fully paraphrasing that.
No, go on, yeah.
But if you've got let's say a hypothesis.
Yes.
I'm just trying to think how do you differentiate go and test a hypothesis versus I'm actually testing an interest.
Yep.
You, I don't know, Facebook and the like button. I don't know.
Yeah, go on.
I mean, Mark Zuckerberg thinks, the like button. I think people actually want this.
Yep.
But isn't that playing into his interest? I'm just trying to delineate.
Yeah. No, very, very good question. So what I've presented here today is kind of like intentionally focused on product strategy, right? On building a thing and moving forward, or either the building it to evaluate and build like fast and quickly, or long-term strategic thinking around the product and the business. And because of that, I've used terms like goals, objectives. What you're touching on there is things like a question, like a user research question or a hypothesis test. And those are very valid ways to approach user research. especially hypothesis testing. It comes from more of kind of like that classic academic space. And I would definitely not push back on that kind of approach. For me, it's a lot about understanding like we're going to evaluate this hypothesis, and it might be like a hunch or a gut feel, but then it's also about having a discussion around, great, so if we find out this information, are we then prepared to act on it, or having a discussion with your stakeholders, to say, this research might take a few weeks or a few months or however long. Are you prepared to commit that effort and time for us to get information that may or may not be useful? And that's completely fine. Like, I've had to have those discussions, and I've also had not had those discussions where I've gone off and done 3 months of in-depth user research to then deliver insights that kind of get filed away and not really used ever again, right? So I hope that kind of answers the question there, that there's a lot of schools of thought, and they aren't bad at all. It's just kind of like what the end action is, I suppose. Yeah. Any other questions about that, or is that a good answer for you?
Yeah, I think what I pulled from that was maybe be open to what comes back.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to play into your own interest and the bias you have around wanting that interest to be true as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's that kind of like open-mindedness and trying to avoid ego scratching too, I suppose, in a way. Any other questions yourself? Yeah.
Hi, I'm a founder. And
Nice. Yeah.
I love that point that you said about attitudinal
Mm.
versus behavioural.
Yep.
That they don't align.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't like to read too much about what I'm doing, but my attitude, which is to shift us from sedentary,
Yeah.
is
Go on.
one that most people love, and yes, we agree, we're sipped for too long, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you know you can move the needle
Yeah.
to your choice?
Yeah.
So lots of things have been done in the past, hardly anything moves the needle
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
your choice. So how do I get to that point where my research gives me insights about that?
Yeah. Really good question. And I think like that difference between attitude and behavior is like fundamental in so many things. I think to answer your question, I think going back to that idea of like research phases. So in my experience, the attitudinal comes a lot from discovery research, where you're trying to expand, the idea to really understand the problem, what's going on. I don't know why, but I didn't include this slide that kind of creates the. Let me try and go back. So this builds into the double diamond, for those who are familiar with the double diamond, where you go from discovery back down in and then out again and then in. So that's kind of my approach to that, is you can expand the problem space with discovery, mostly attitudinal research, and then you go down to kind of evaluate, test to prove that, okay, cool, this is what people say they want. Let's work out a way to test if they will actually act on it if we introduce a prompt on our app or whatever. And then that might work, which actually links quite well back to that other point about hypothesis testing, because you've got a hypothesis to test it, discovery, evaluative, that might work, it might not, and then you go out again, right? Does that answer the question? Wonderful, yeah. Any other thoughts, questions yourself? Yeah.
With AI tools,
Yes.
what kind of AI tools would you recommend, and how much would you rely on them versus using other methods?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So, with the AI tools that exist, I think what I'm seeing a lot of is what I call smart surveys. I think that the AI tools refer to them more as moderated interviews. So effectively, these are, like I said a bit before, where you write out your questions, and then the tool will recruit people, or at the very least give them a link and an email. The user goes in, clicks the link, and then they get given questions on the screen which they answer. It records down their answer, and then depending how smart they are, they've got prompts built in that'll adapt the next question to their answer, and it can really do some smart stuff. Gets that recording, analyzes it in particular ways, blah, 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 blah. We go through. So those are all really powerful. The thing that I see is that it can deliver what looks like a really nice, clean output, but you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes too much. So the best tools that I've seen deliver more of a report where it says, like, these particular words were used 80% of the time, or this amount. So it gives you the actual raw information that you can then read yourself a bit more, interpret. So that's where I see them being quite powerful. And those have existed for a while. For those who know usertesting.com, they've had an unmoderated tool for 5 years plus, I think now. I think that there's a startup in London, Wandering AI, who I've worked a little bit with. I would recommend them, or at least speak to me and I can introduce you if you would like. But the thing with AI tools is they are, let's go back to here. So they, for me, hit this space, right? So it's like quantitative at, it does fall into the attitudinal and behavioral. So it's here in behavioral because there's also tools that the more established tools here, I think, are more about getting people to go through a website. So you give them the link to your app prototype or website or whatever, and people go through completing a task, and then as they go through, they're prompted to answer questions. So it's recording their behavior as they go through, boop, 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 and then recording down their confusion if they speak about, I don't get this button, or blah, 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 blah. So that's why it kind of like hovers between here. I think that the new tools which I've just described are probably getting more into this space, so it's like smarter surveys. But the point is that it is a tool. I would not rely only on these tools. I would also run my own stuff, and then you can see if you're getting results that are comparable. Does that make sense? Yeah, wonderful. Any other questions or thoughts? At the back there?
Yeah, just quickly on the user survey.
Go on, yeah.
Helping companies create all the remote tools. One company uses the software, and then we feed those different job titles. The struggle is getting that down to a number of questions that will keep them engaged.
Yeah.
We put it down to 20 is 7 minutes. I think it's too long. Do you have any sort of guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, it's very common. So for context, I'm working at a bank currently, and I've been put in charge of their annual survey. Before my time, the survey lasted 20 minutes, and it was absolutely diabolical, in my personal opinion. So we've worked hard to improve it. So yeah, I completely feel your pain there. But what's been quite effective, I think, is to do a bit of like effectively usability testing on this actual survey. So booking time with people. It can just be people around the office, or whoever's available, and going through the actual survey and getting them to talk through how they understand the questions. You might find there's a lot of redundancy within the questions, especially once you get towards the end. People feel it's the same kind of question that was asked before, even if you as the author think it's not. I think then you can understand the mindset and how they interpret the questions, which does help just to reduce that clutter, right? Yeah, I hope that helps. Any other questions yourself? Yeah.
Thanks for the great talk. So
No worries. Yeah.
just wanted to ask if you could say a bit more about the kind of demographics and everything. So
Mm.
what type of people might be thinking your demographics and when do you bring that in? So this is probably more in B2C context.
Yeah. When you say people, you mean like the customers and end users? Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, demographics and segments and things and personas and stuff is a big topic, but I think I'm very wary of marketing versus like users. So I think that target groups for marketing, the language used around that tends to be quite quantitative. So it's like age groups, income brackets, stages of life. And then you've got your actual users, which are more around that attitudes, behaviors, and a lot around how they're actually using the product. So trying to combine those too much can get tricky. I tend to focus more on like that idea of like needs and goals. So not people's ages, not their income, that kind of a thing, but more around like what's the goal of the person using the tool. So I guess to talk on B2B, even though I think you said B2C, but B2B is a good group because you might have the person who spends the money at the top and they buy the tool and they buy a travel booking tool because it's the cheapest one on the market and they're friends with the CEO or whatever, I don't know, but they're not the actual ones who use the tool, right? The people who use the tool, they might be the EAs, assistants, whoever, there might be the interns when they get to go on a special project trip. It might be specific roles within the company. They're the ones who have like the needs that the tool has to be built around, but they're not the ones buying the actual tool. So that's the approach I normally take, which is again more of that qualitative aspect to it. So it's kind of dividing what you would like to know. So is it attitudinal, behavioral, quantitative, qualitative? I hope that answers your question. Great. Yes, yourself.
Hi, Rory. Thank you for the talk. It's very insightful.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I come from a product and industrial background.
Yeah. Nice.
I just graduated, and I feel like a lot of my projects are hypothetical. So I'm
Cool,
lucky enough
yeah.
to be able to be ethical.
Nice, yeah.
Think about the environment without going, oh, like if I had a boss, he would hate this because financially terrible decision.
Yeah.
Great for the environment, but it wouldn't make money. So I feel like, especially for a startup or something, you don't have as much budget or time.
Yeah.
To be able to ethically be able to interview every single demographic.
Yeah.
And care about that many parts of the environment.
Mhm.
So how do I kind of prioritize all that? How do I, let's say I actually found in a insightful way, like you'd have to sacrifice a bit of profit.
Mm.
You're able to be environmentally more considerate. How do I push that to a company as well? Overall ethics.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're kind of dealing with this at my current role as well, is like how much do people care about the environment and how do we push it? I think like generally, I do think that businesses are start to care more about sustainability, which is generally like a good thing. I think as well, it's a lot about that kind of like understanding, again, like the attitudes about the people. So what I've found is that in the surveys we've done, there's a lot of like don't know answers, like we don't really care that much, or we're not really sure, and that shows that like 50% of respondents actually aren't aware of sustainability, that like the actions we've done within the business or what we're doing, or they don't really care about it. And then within the 50% that have responded as an actual score, you can see a breakdown of how much they care or not care. And what that's told us is that it's come back to a lot about communication within the company, that we're not talking to the customers enough about what we're doing. I feel like, yeah, it's a hard question to answer because a lot is based on the company values. But where I've seen the rubber meet the road is that communication around the values and actions taken, and if the customers are actually like aware of that. So it's this kind of interesting gray space, which like gets to this really unique point about survey design, is it's almost as important to capture what people don't know about or don't care about, or them answering like does not apply to me, as it is to actually get a score out of 5, you know, because that's super important information. I don't know if that's a great answer for your question, but that's like my kind of experience right now. It'd be good to speak more later as well. I feel like we're probably closing in on the end. I think there was one more question at the back there. Yeah.
Any tips on how to go about recruiting the right sort of users for your research, whether that's either in B2B or research setting sometimes?
Yes.
Challenges around
Yeah.
that experience.
How big's your company, I suppose, or
So I'm working at various companies at the
Yeah.
moment, but you know, there's been times when I've wanted to just go to a coffee shop and grab users.
Yeah.
That's, you know, there's also times where I've worked with, so for example, previous company I was only working with commercial property lawyers.
Yep.
So you can't go to a coffee shop and find a commercial property
Sure.
lawyer at the site.
Oh, it depends where in London and how expensive the coffee is, but yeah, sure, yeah, yeah.
So, you know, that's just two very extreme examples.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just wondered if you got any thoughts or experience on how to go about identifying, you know, the right sort of users, and then
Yeah.
how to find them, because that
Yeah.
that's the most difficult thing in my experience.
Yeah. So I think the kind of standard advice I give to startups who have that kind of a question, who are building themselves up, is build a customer panel early on, and that customer panel doesn't have to be called a customer panel. That's what, like, user research panel. There was a good point made earlier about user research can be also like a sales call, and it can kind of be spun with a few other things. But building that like effectively a mailing list where people have bought into the company a bit and are open to having discussions, and that kind of high response rate is super useful. That comes with bias. It's people who are more invested, they're more of your target customers. So there's bias there, but I think that's a great beginning point, because you've got a reliable way to communicate with people who will communicate back to you. And I think like it comes down to a lot of very practical elements, like noting down people's emails in a easy to get, you know, CRM or Excel, prompting them on the website with pop-ups. And then I think what I found is that if you've got that like core group of people, then you become more aware of your blind spots. So who are we not speaking to? To then recruit those blind spots, there's a lot of ways to do it. The easy answer is to throw money at it. There's plenty of companies out there who will do recruitment for you, and you can pay them as much money as you would like, and it can become very, very targeted. I think organic snowball kind of recruiting is very effective as well. So from the people that you can access more easily, prompting them to reach to get names of, like, you know, friends and like family, even speaking to your own friends and family and the people that you know, is just a great way to build up a base. It can get very nuanced, but I think that ability to know who you are speaking to and then know who you're not is a great way to begin. I hope that answers your question. And then the other thing I think is building a pipeline for user research. So knowing how to go from we need to recruit people right through to how to run an interview. If you've got that process built clean and efficient, it helps with everything else because it gives you that confidence to reach out to people and know the marketing funnel effectively of we can recruit and we can get down to getting them in an interview, and we know that process. Wonderful. Yeah, I hope that helps. I'm available to speak more to about any nuances. Brilliant. I feel like I've probably gone well over time, but really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm and interaction. Let me hand it back to our host with the most.
Thank you very much, Rory. I mean, to be honest, like there is not much I can say. We still have space for another hour, so you can still do some networking. There are some coffees that should be refreshed right now, and Rory is staying here if you have any other questions, and I'm here as well. So yes, thank you very much for joining. I'll see you next time. Thank you.